Hi, everyone. It's Yoojin Lee, and you're listening to Money Crashers podcast. I'm here to make your financial life better by helping you make wiser choices about managing, saving, investing, and spending money. Today, I have with me Eugena Oh, President and CEO of the I Have a Dream Foundation. It's one of the most important nonprofits in New York City and gets the attention of many important people, including Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and New York State Mayor Eric Adams, who recently attended their gala. Before I proceed, Eugenia, I just want to give a quick history of I Have a Dream and verbatim from their website because I think it's such a beautiful organization doing life-changing work. So in 1981, businessman Eugene M. Lang returned to PS 121, the elementary school he had attended in East Harlem 50 years earlier, to address a class of graduating sixth graders. He intended to tell the students, "Work hard and you'll succeed." But on the way to the podium, the school principal told Lang that 3/4 of the school's students would never finish high school, prompting Lang to make an impromptu change to his speech. He promised college tuition to every single sixth grader who stayed in high school and graduated. Lang told the class about witnessing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March in Washington. He urged the students to dream their own dreams and promised to do all he could to help them achieve their goals. Eugenia, you told me that the motto was from first grade to first job for the dreamer, correct?
That's right.
Can you tell me more about this organization and what you do for them?
Sure, of course. So you told a little bit about our founding story, which, is true, and that happened in 1981. And I often like to say, Mr. Lang made this big speech and there was cheering and applause and so much excitement because, he had removed a huge financial hurdle for the students that we serve, and we do call them dreamers for I Have a Dream. And, it allowed the students and their families and their parents to really set a goal of going to college and going to school past high school, because that financial hurdle was so insurmountable for them that it wasn't really realistic, right? But he woke up the next day, Mr. Lang, and he realized he had a problem, which is that he wanted to make good on his promise to send these dreamers to college, but he didn't really know what to do between sixth grade and college, right? And what it would take to get to that point, academically, socially, emotionally, right? And so he went out into the community and he hired a full-time staff person, Johnny Rivera, and he was a social worker who was born and raised and resided and continues to reside to this day in East Harlem. And Johnny is really the person who put together the program that supported the dreamers to allow them to achieve this goal of going to college. And so every single day after school, on the weekends, and every summer, the dreamers had different types of programming that allowed them to be prepared to actually go to college. And that's really the essence of what we are doing and providing for our dreamers up until today. We are an incredibly deep and robust program. It's very holistic, right? So our programs are focused on academics, socio-emotional life skills, and really college and career readiness. So, when you think about that, it's a little bit of everything, right? So most of our program staff, they come from an education background, they're former teachers, or a social work background, right? So, and we call the full-time program staff, they're typically program directors, and they become really embedded in the lives of our dreamers and their families, and almost as an extended family member, right? And they become kind of that primary person that is helping to navigate life with our families and our young people. So they are on site at the school. They are really kind of case managers, but case managers that follow the dreamer year after year after year and really get to know and develop incredibly deep relationships based on trust with our young people. So, to zoom out a little bit, from that one kind of group of dreamers that we supported in East Harlem, over the past 41 years, we've served over 20,000 young people now.
Oh, wow.
Across 25 different states. And currently we're in 9 9 cities, and we are serving almost 4,000 young people from first grade to first job, in that pipeline. So we are not just in New York City, we're, around the country, but we were founded in New York City, and we are also headquartered in New York City today.
Mm-hmm. So how much does it cost to carry a child from first grade to first job?
Yep. So there's a lot of variability based on locality. And so that's something, important to keep in mind. But it's roughly approximately $2,500 per year per child. So over 15 years of programming, which is really what we do provide, it is about $38,000 per child. Okay. And then, of course, we still have this college tuition component. So we do set aside funding for our dreamers to use towards their post-secondary tuition. And I say post-secondary because it can be a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, vocational or trade school, all of these multiple pathways, are encouraged and explored. And we don't do kind of the full tuition to school anymore. But since 1981, there's a lot of public funding that's available in terms of Pell Grants, and there's a lot of private funding in terms of scholarships that are available for children who are unable to kind of cover the full cost of college. So we help our dreamers access that, and we provide we like to provide a minimum of $2,000 to $3,000 per year towards tuition for our dreamers.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's obvious you're in this position because you're a firm believer that education plays a pivotal role in one's future. And I know you're a well-educated woman yourself, graduating from the University of Pennsylvania and getting your JD from Temple University. Obviously, with these impressive names, you were able to get your foot in the door of big-name law firms making even more impressive money. But I know things took a turn for you, and you eventually left the firm and law behind, even though you were barred in 4 states, which is amazing. But can you tell me what happened? Like, how did your career start off in law and end up here?
Sure. I actually, this was part of my plan. So my very first job after college was through an education-focused nonprofit, and it was called Teach for America. So I taught as a middle school teacher in the Bronx, which is not too far from where I grew up on Long Island. And then I actually worked in the offices of Teach for America doing fundraising. And that was a really pivotal moment for me, an aha moment, because, I think, as is probably pretty typical, I wasn't really aware of the fact that working in a nonprofit was a career path or a career choice, right? And, as you mentioned, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, which is an extremely pre-professional school. So it was almost a foregone conclusion that I would go to some kind of grad school, right? That, and, I am the daughter of Korean immigrants. So education was incredibly stressed, to me. And again, there was this presupposition, of course, I would go to some kind of grad school, right? So, early on in my life, I decided that I should become a lawyer, and that was something that was interesting to me. But it was interesting to me not so much as a way to maximize my income, but more as a way to actually fight for kind of social change and justice, which was always a really big passion of mine. So, that's what led me to go to Teach for America. And then all of a sudden I look around and I realize, oh, you can actually work at a nonprofit, like you can make a career here. And, I decided that was something that I wanted to return to after I, practiced law for a little bit at a law firm. And so that's what I did. And, I think initially I was trying to figure out a way to blend the practice of law and nonprofit work. But I realized that practicing law was not as exciting for me as other aspects of work, right? It wasn't my passion. And when I worked at Teach for America, I felt so motivated and inspired by the mission. And I knew that that's what I wanted to return to, very mission-focused, mission-oriented work. So I'm really fortunate in that I was able to find that with I Have a Dream. I came back into the nonprofit space, and I came to I Have a Dream because my former boss's boss at Teach for America had come to I Have a Dream. And so she took a chance on me and hired me onto the team. And that was, over 10 years ago now.
Wow. You mentioned that you're Korean. So as a Korean American, a daughter of Korean immigrants, it's, as you said before, it's school, education, and your career is very stressed upon. And how did your parents react when you decided to let go of your legal future?
I think I'm very fortunate, and I have a little bit of a unique experience in that, my parents they're such beautiful people. They're very, 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 very supportive, and I think they trust me a great deal. So they have never really, put too much pressure on my career choices. I do think there's a lot of confusion around nonprofit in general. I mean, there's no corollary, there's no analogous space in Korea, right? So there's nothing that they can really say, oh, okay, I know what you mean, right? But you hear the words nonprofit and they thought, oh no, you're never going to make any money.
You're working for free. It's pro bono.
You're just volunteering for the rest of your life. And so I had to explain, no. I mean, it's just kind of, the focus of the organization is not profit making, right? Which is the focus of almost any company, right? In the United States, it's about providing value to society. And I actually think, one of the things that has been encouraging, is that I do make enough money to live a comfortable life. Right. And I had to kind of show that to them as well, because it's, I think there is this notion and certainly it still persists, and it's definitely, there's logic behind it, but that nonprofit employees are really, really, really underpaid for their value. Right. Because, you don't want to take money away from your mission. But what's happened kind of in our sector and industry is I think this realization that, well, we need to be able to compensate the talent, because it has to be sustainable, and you want to be able to bring, some of the best thinkers into this field to help us solve some of these really intractable challenges. So I did have to reassure them that no, I'm going to have a salary. I'm not just volunteering for the rest of my life. And, I think they see how much I enjoy the work and how, passionate I am about it. So it's back to my parents, they've always been very supportive, and now they're really proud. I think they kind of have a deeper understanding of what exactly we do at I Have a Dream. Right. And I think it's good, and it's very focused on education. A lot of these Korean values that they totally understand,
Well, fun fact, I'm Korean too. And obviously, as you know, we actually have the same name. Our Korean name is both Yoojin, but you sold out and Americanized your name, and I didn't.
That's right. But that's my parents wanted to, right. Yeah. They wanted to make sure that my name made sense to, all of the Americans. They didn't even give my brother a Korean.
Wait, so your brother doesn't even have a Korean name?
Nope. He only has his name Daniel. They just wanted to have him, fit in. And yeah, he's still a little bitter about that.
That's so funny. My sister, who was actually I was born in Korea, but my sister's name is Julie. She doesn't have a Korean name either. That's so funny. It must be a thing, like just to fit in, whatever. But yeah, so my Korean parents, going back from what you were saying, I wouldn't say they were as supportive as yours. When I graduated from NYU with $50,000 a year in debt, and I decided to pursue, go into the fashion industry and pursue something there. They weren't very supportive because they didn't understand. They thought that I would end up working at a store, like a retail store, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they didn't really understand. And so it wasn't until I actually ended up at Ralph Lauren, and they were like, oh, Polo, I know Polo. Okay, now I could tell my friends that you work for Polo. And I don't think they really understand what I do now currently. I think I'm pretty sure my dad tells people I work for the internet. I'm not even so kidding. But I do know they're proud of me at this point. I think being able to pivot in the different stages of my life and having to change my career every time because of the kids and supporting the husband, I think they are proud of me at this point. But yeah, so I know we have something else in common besides our name. Um, I believe you have Japanese blood in you. One of my ancestors is Sayaga from my mom's side. He's the Japanese general who defected in Korea during the Korean War.
Hmm.
But tell me about your Japanese link.
Sure. So I'm not part Japanese, but my grandparents on my dad's side, they're from Busan, like the very southern, port city in Korea. And they actually were both in Japan for, I think, 15 years. So their families brought them over to Japan under, when Korea was colonized by Japan. It was extremely dangerous. There was a lot of uncertainty, and so there several, like hundreds of Korean families relocated to different parts of Japan, where there was potentially, more safety, more
Mm-hmm.
ways to earn a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my 할머니 and 할아버지, my grandmother and grandfather on my dad's side, met in Japan and got married there and had their first three children there.
Wow.
And so after, World War II was over and Japan retreated from Korea, they were part of this mass migration of repatriation, basically, of Koreans who went back. So my dad's three older siblings were born in Korea, and then he and his younger sister, were born in Japan, and then he and his younger sister were born in Busan. So my grandmother, who actually is still with us in New York, moved in with us after my grandfather passed. She speaks Korean, Japanese, and English.
Oh, wow.
And she lived for 15 years from the age of 8 to 23, I think, in Japan. So it was a very formative time of her life. She can read Japanese as well. And, I think it's so fascinating because, she has a very specific experience of being Korean in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And she has so many stories from that time, and it's always really fascinating to learn about it. And so my dad also, has this experience where his three older brothers spoke Japanese too. They did their schooling in Japan for the first few years of their lives. So that's our connection. And I don't know if you know the author, the book, the series now, Pachinko by Yoojin Lee,
Mm-hmm. I'm
but she talks about
familiar
this.
with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she talks about this. Like the whole book is about ethnic Koreans in Japan. And my mom, my dad, and I all read it. And I was telling my father how much reading the book made me think about my grandmother, because it's, the protagonist is a young girl whose story is so similar to my grandmother's,
Mm-hmm.
and actually Netflix or Apple made it into a series, and it's on now, and it's such a beautiful series. It's like they shot it in Busan and in Japan and in New York City. But when my dad was watching the series, he was saying, "Oh my gosh, like all of these places that they're showing, I remember these places from my childhood."
That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
It must have given you a clearer picture of like what your grandparents went through and being able to see things from their eyes. Because you could hear stories, but then you could only imagine, right? But to be able to actually visually see is like something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And circling back to I Have a Dream, can I tell the listeners what your current dream is?
Wow, what my current dream is. Personally, professionally, does it matter?
Both.
Oh my gosh, that's an interesting question, So, with I Have a Dream, I feel like what we do is such life-changing work,
Mm-hmm.
and we're bringing resources and opportunity to children who really just need the opportunity to achieve their full potential, to blossom. And so, unfortunately, the need for our programs is so deep, right? And we can't get to every community that needs an I Have a Dream Foundation. But my dream would be that we are able to serve way more children with the services that we have, because we've seen the impact that it has on, on not just the child but the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you kind of unlock that potential, child goes to college, like all the future generations of that family, they're they're going to be on much more solid ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then the need for other social services that they might have relied on also falls away, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we have this really exciting new partnership with the Cherokee Nation to open up programs for Cherokee children based in Oklahoma. And that's really exciting because we're hopeful that we can, you know, work with Indigenous people and maybe bring the services that we have to other Indigenous tribes, which would be really, really huge. So I guess my professional, you know, my dream for I Have a Dream is that we can just be in more communities, that we can serve more young people with kind of this intergenerational impact that, like, once we provide the services to the kids, like, that family won't need the services ever again, you know. That's like what we're trying to do. Gosh, personally, I don't know. I haven't even thought about that in a while, which is so crazy. But, you know, I feel like I'm getting to this place where, you know, I'm really grateful that I can balance a lot of different things in my life that I love. Like, you know, I have 2 young kids. My oldest child just started is in kindergarten now, you know, and I'm grateful that, you know, one of the silver linings of this pandemic is, like, with this hybrid work schedule, you know, we can really be there for all of these different things that are happening at the end of the school year, for example. And I often remark to my partner, like, wow, if this was the before times and we were both still working and commuting into Manhattan the way that, you know, we had before, how would we do this? You know, how would we, you know, we have these once or twice, I'm sure you're very familiar, like, we have these once or twice weekly things at the school at the end of the school year for 4 to 5 weeks in a row. And it's impossible. Like, how could we have done this? You know, and so I'm really glad that we have that. And maybe this is my long-winded way of just saying, you know, I hope that I can continue to do this and have this nice kind of balanced experience where I feel like I can work really hard at something that I love, but I can also be very present, you know, as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, and, you know, as a daughter, as a sister, and that I can continue to figure out how to do that even as I kind of move through different jobs and different organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Being able to have that work-life balance is extremely important, especially as a mom. There's something missing when a mom isn't able to do something for their kids. You know, I believe that we're almost like the heart of the family, and it's important for our kids for us to be present. It doesn't have to be every single event, you know, but then it's important for us to be able to not let go of our dreams and our career, but also to be able to be present for our kids. And I know you also had this other dream that you didn't mention. I don't know why, but I heard you wanted to be a backup dancer for Beyonce.
I was like, is she going to bring that? Well, you know, as a child, I was really into dancing, you know, and I did all the classes, and I'm not saying I was very good, but I enjoyed it immensely, you know, and I did all different styles, and in the school play, I would always be, you know, or the school musical, I would always be in the dance, like, troupe, right? And then you go to college and it's much harder, you know, to just do something like that just for fun. And I did actually try out for a couple of the dance troupes, and I made it pretty far, but I never made it all the way in, which is, you know, I think a good signal. However, I would, from time to time, and I was doing this up until pretty recently, I would still take drop-in classes at different dance studios. You know, in the city, there's Broadway Dance or, you know, Alvin Ailey Extension. And it's still something that I find is so much fun, you know? And so I think my dream is, imagine if I could just do that professionally and just get paid to dance and travel around and, you know, be in these arenas. And Beyonce is Beyonce, of course. I mean, she's just like a goddess, and, you know, all of her dancing is amazing. But yeah, so that would be that's my very secret, not that secret anymore, dream of just being able to just dance like that, but also be really good, you know. Be a really
That's so funny. That's another thing we have in common. I was on my high school's dance team.
No way.
But I feel like the last time I even danced was like my wedding. Like, you know, like we don't go to a club. Like, like I think one of my favorite reasons why I like to go to the gym or go to boot camp is because they play like
The
Beyonce
music.
and Beyonce. I think that's the closest thing to a club that I've been to in a long time.
And just doing 100 squats to it instead of
Yes, yes.
yeah.
What's your favorite Beyonce song?
Okay, so I listen to Beyonce a lot when I'm working out.
Mm-hmm.
So I love listening to Girls
Mm-hmm. Of course.
and of course and Get Me Bodied,
Uh-huh.
you know? So like it's the fast paced, like the ones that you can really dance or run to, you know, when I'm running, I'll listen to that. So I don't know if it's my favorite, but I just listen to those two songs all the time. What's yours?
My favorite is Love on Top. It's not one of her popular songs, but I
It's
felt
so
like
good.
that was the first time I heard her vocals. Like it's not that she was a terrible singer in any regard,
Mhm.
but you don't really get to see the full vocal, I want to say like skills of a singer from pop music. You know, like it's just too they have to be very safe and play catchy beats and whatever. So you don't get to hear the vocals and its potential. But when I heard that song, I was like, wow, she could sing. She could
Yeah,
really, really sing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I also know that you're talking about the gym. You have a black belt in Taekwondo.
I do.
You are very multifaceted, I must say. You're very interesting. Are your kids in Taekwondo currently?
So they're not yet, but we do want to sign my son up. He will be turning 6 later this year, so we think that that's a good time. And now that things are a little bit, you know, safer and opening back up, it makes sense. But yes, I mean, I got my black belt also when I was a kid. You know, I did that when I was a child. But yeah, I feel like it's such a cliche in some ways, right? You know, Korean Koreans with Taekwondo, but of course, yes, yes.
My kids before the pandemic, they used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because my husband did it. Um, I honestly, these martial arts, I have no interest. So personally, because my husband, I would watch him roll, like it's called rolling with the other men, and his head is literally locked in between someone's thighs, right? Like this is not cute. I don't want to be sweat on. I don't want to be
Yeah.
touching anyone.
Yeah, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really involved. Like physically, it's like very intimate, you know. But it's an amazing workout.
It
Like, I
is. It
mean,
is. One thing I wanted to mention when you were talking about how you're performing. So yesterday, the middle one, the 4-year old, she had her first recital last night, and we went to watch her. She was literally, I want to say, I want to say she was literally drunk in adrenaline from her performance. She loved, like, she was drunk in stardom. As soon as she came home, she's like, I want to do it again. Like, but she doesn't mean I want to do it again. Like, I want to do gymnastics or the, like, whatever again. She wants to perform and be, like, applauded and, like, you know, she loves the stage. So I'm like, oh
that's
gosh, this is interesting.
that is interesting. I mean, I don't think that every child is like that. You
Mhm.
know, some are really, really shy and nervous. So it sounds like you have a little performer on your hands.
A little scared, but she does ask if so she watches me do like Instagram Reels, TikTok, and postings on YouTube. So she asked me to make videos with her. I was like, okay, I have to figure this out, but I'll do it. Yeah, but we'll see. I don't know with the internet and social media and kids, it's I still have to do my research. I think that's what it is. I haven't really solidified where I stand in terms
Mm,
of like what to post, what not to post, what to talk about, what not to talk about, to let them in or not, you know? So that's something I have to start navigating, but I still didn't do any research, so we'll see.
yeah, you have to let me know because I do think that that is really important, but also really scary. You know, one of my colleagues, who actually our chief program officer, he has two daughters as well, and he was telling me he's a middle schooler. She is amazing at teaching herself things through YouTube, and he was saying how you know we really use YouTube for entertainment, but her generation, and she in particular, used YouTube for learning. She taught herself how to code.
Oh, that's
And she
amazing.
wanted to make a website. And, she completely independently watched a bunch of YouTube videos and made a website for this class-based project. And he was telling us this because, we talk about this a lot too, even with our young people, our students that we serve at I Have a Dream, social media use, internet use, and then especially, it's so funny and also so scary, as we're transitioning them through college and into their careers, you have to do all this hygiene check for what you have out there on your social media, because employers will look at it. And, if you've been on social media literally since you were 4 and now you're 22, you might have put some stuff out there that you don't want people to necessarily see as an employer. So we go through this hygiene and cleaning. Oh my gosh, what is your email address? Is it embarrassing? Can you make it a normal, just your first name or your last name? Some really basic stuff, and but it's important and eye-opening. But as a parent, I'm like, oh my gosh, like our kids literally will be on the internet their entire lives. Will be on social media their entire lives. Like they won't know a world without it. So, that can be really scary. And so far I've been like zero, nothing. But now, now that we have kids who are in school, a kid who's in school, he learns about everything from his friends,
Yep, I know. When you just start to having to answer difficult questions. But going back to the hybrid situation, I was just curious, how is it like taking on meetings or doing, let's say, a podcast like this with me, with your husband in the house too, since you guys are both kind of hybrid or working from home? How difficult is it, and how do you manage that?
I think we found a good system and we've stuck with it. And it took a bunch of trial and error, right? I mean, back in March 2020, it was ridiculous. Like, we didn't have a desk in the bedroom, and I think we were also kind of thinking, is this for 2 weeks? We certainly weren't thinking this is the rest of our lives, right? At that point. So, everything was so temporary. And I definitely have a tendency to kind of just I'm very action oriented. So I was just working. Even my office in our office, I had to one day someone came in and they're like, did you just start today because you don't have anything in your office that shows that it's your office? I mean, I don't, I just I'm there to work, and then I would run home, So just to take a beat and say, okay, what do we need? We need a desk. We need another light. We need whatever it is. We need a printer. We need a this or that. And my husband is much better with that. And so I think we figured out kind of, this is my workstation. His workstation is in another place, and we don't really cross paths during the day because it's so hard if, he's in a Zoom and I'm let's have lunch. He's like, I'm literally in a meeting with 10 people right now, and everyone just heard you say that, or or vice versa. So we try not to, unless we have a plan, okay, we'll have lunch on Friday together, whatever, right? Because the nature of work is that both of our work is that we're just constantly in meetings, unfortunately. So the chances are that he's not just sitting there typing. He's sitting there typing, and there's 10 people looking at him, or vice versa. So. And, we had to navigate all that, like so many people, we had never thought that we would be working from home. So we didn't have office space. We didn't have an office setup. We had to set that up. And also just, I think it took a while for us to realize we really shouldn't be crossing paths during the day. We're trying to have these little conversations because inevitably one of us would get snippy because it just wasn't a good time, So I'm sure, and all of these articles and stories that you read and hear, it's a similar situation for everyone. And we're very fortunate. We both have, for the past 2 years, two plus years, been in a situation where going into the office is an option, but it's not required. So a part of our system is that I go into the office once or twice a week. He goes into the office probably once a week, which is nice to like get out of the house and use your legs a little, you know, and like see other people and, you know, like buy a salad from Midtown Manhattan instead of just making it yourself at home like you do every day, just like that variety. And for me, I really do like, I'm a very extroverted person. So I do like meeting people in person. And a lot of, you know, and a lot of what I need to do is, as I mentioned, just meeting. So having that ability to actually like see someone and, you know, have a meal with them or have an actual coffee with them in person is like such a great change of pace. And I think the first time that we did that was probably after like 6 hardcore months in lockdown.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was good. But yeah, we definitely, for the first like 3 months, I feel like we were literally like, I think I was working on like my nightstand. You know, like can't even like balance your whole laptop on it. Like it's like hanging off. Like I don't, and finally one day I'm like, let's just buy a $50 desk from IKEA and like make this like more of a long-term setup. Yeah.
That must have been hard for you because I know you're, how do you say, a little frugal when it comes to purchasing stuff, right? You told me a story about how your husband had to buy you shoes because there was a hole. Like that's how much you wear out your stuff.
I'm definitely frugal, but I think more, I mean, and I'm just a practical person, but I think actually the thing is I really, really dislike shopping. Like I just dislike it. So yes, he has had to buy me shoes. Because my shoes are falling apart. I actually recently had to, so for the Ivy Dream Foundation, we had our annual gala.
Right.
And that's where speaker Nancy Pelosi came. It was just a few weeks ago. And I really wanted to wear a white suit, you know, in her honor. And I kept trying to find one online and I just couldn't. And it's really hard to buy something like that online, but I was going to try. So finally I had to just acquiesce and I went to the mall. And it was, Eugene, it was a haunting experience. Like, I don't remember the last time I went into a brick and mortar store.
Right.
And tried on a whole bunch of outfits. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm just in a store, like, you know, pulling clothes off the rack. And I was like, I can't believe that we used to shop like this all the time. And just, I mean, it's so all consuming. And then there's so much pressure. Like all the salespeople are, you know, like, oh, that looks great. I'm like, this looks horrible. I know. Don't see. So, yeah.
Did you have to go with your kids or were you able to go by yourself?
I went by myself during the day. Yeah. It was getting down to the wire and I said, okay, I have to have something to wear to this gala. Like I can't just, I mean, I need some clothes. So yeah.
Wait, going back to gala, so I know you sat next to Nancy. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. So, you know, I really admire her for her leadership, for her strength, you know, for her discipline, for her stamina. You know, she's been a lawmaker for decades, right? And I was so nervous, but she was so lovely. And just, you know, so she came to this event. She stayed for the whole event. She was our honoree. She literally stayed there for 3 hours. I mean, it was just so beyond generous of her. And she took pictures and shook hands with, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people. It was like a mob, you know, trying to get to her. We were trying to protect her, but people were really aggressive, actually, you know. I mean, like grown-ups saying, no, please, just one picture, you know. And she said yes to every single person. She spoke to anyone who wanted to speak to her. And I just remember looking at her thinking, she must be so tired, you know. It was from 6 to 9 o'clock, and you know, she had a press call at 6 a.m. the next morning. She was on Morning Joe, she had a breakfast at 8 a.m. with supporters, right? And she kept going. So during dinner, I was like, I'm not going to bother her that much. Like, I'm not going to make her make a conversation with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to just let her eat and sit and enjoy the program. But she was so lovely. She was just very real. Like, she would crack a little joke, or she'd say like,
Mm-hmm.
"Who is this again? Who is this dreamer? I want to meet this person." We showed a video. When the video was over, she looked at me. She said, "Wow, that was just so done. Oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that was great." So she was just lovely. And what I really enjoyed is that she brought one date to the gala, and it was her daughter.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, her daughter, who lives in Manhattan and is a filmmaker, and she was Alexandra. And so I thought that was really nice. And kind of, she said, I'm all about my family. Like, who isn't,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Eugenia, thank you so much for your time. You yourself were really generous with your time. So I want to thank you. I know you're super busy. So being able to sit down and talk to you means a lot to me. So thank you. And for anyone else listening that wants to help with I Have a Dream, you can click on the link below. It's ihaveadreamfoundation.org. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having me.